good evening. We're pretty much toward the end of the day. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've been able to take some great notes and learn a few things and have some good conversation with people anywhere from, if you got one hive, if you got 1,000 hives, you still have good conversation. Come away with something. I got these 3 chairs, and I don't know how to introduce this. Put this together. How do you put somebody like Fredrick Dunn in maybe this chair right here?
Whoa, Fred! Whoa, Fred!
I guess so far.
In the middle, Fred.
This guy right here.
In the middle.
I want you in the middle.
Yeah,
Actually, you.
middle, Fred.
Right between them?
Yeah.
It's that you were leading this, right? You've got all the questions.
Oh, I'm the leader.
I'm supposed to bring the power.
I think when you look at the 3 of us, you'll identify quickly who the leader should be.
Where's your wife?
And that is over there.
Yeah, that's the leader, isn't it?
That's the leader.
How about Mr. Ed? Mr. Ed, everybody. Yeah, so how do you introduce this? You just don't. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mr. Randy McCaffrey, 6'8". Rooster. You guys are going to have to share a mic. I don't know who wants to touch each other's.
Randy's going to make a false narrative, so if you would all appear to be happy, regardless of what the truth is.
You got a jacket here? You ready? I see it. It's okay. You're in good shape. No, we're ready. You ready? Good. You good? Yo, Mr. Ed here. Professor Fred Dunn, world famous. Well, Mike Barry, but this is the
628
Rooster.
The way to be. Oh yeah. Happy Friday. Welcome to episode number.
Which one is it?
Let's go ahead.
Welcome back to the 628 Dirt
Is a way of life. What you got, Fred?
I did my part already. Much more low key than you guys. So
Can I ask a question?
ask a question. Or go ahead.
Well, because I'm
Put your mic up to your, yeah.
I'm such a fan of yours, and it's like when I first started watching BB videos, Fred Dunn popped up on my video thing, and I said, "Man, look, that guy looks smart." Well, it was a good deception because it fooled me, and I watched some of your videos, but I have to say, after not too long, I was getting ready to do a removal, and I saw one of his videos, and because I remember it was in Algiers, Louisiana, and the bees were in the floor, and I just seen one of Randy's videos. He was pulling bees out of someplace, and I said, "Man, I'm gonna
This
see."
is when he first started getting his education.
Because I started watching. I watched JP first, and then Randy, and I said, "Man," because Randy had a ton of subscribers. I'm just starting my channel, and I said, "Man, maybe if I say his name. he might notice me. So I said, "Oh, hey, Randy, you're Rooster." And so I said, "Oh man," and I called him up, and I said, "Man, I gave you a shout out." And he goes, "Oh, it's all right, thank you." And that was like one of the first times that I had talked to Randy. Oh, thanks, man. So thanks, man.
That's partially true. I was looking for somebody to collaborate with, and I found him. We got together and had dinner with your mom.
Well, that's right. So Rick, you were going to Houston to visit your daughter,
Yeah.
and so on your trip from Gulfport to Houston,
So he's like, I gotta meet you. So he dragged his 90-something-year-old mom
in the rain.
It was not the rain, it was a hurricane.
It was bad. I said, "Mom, we got to go. It's the dirt Rooster."
It's worth dying to go to Ruby Tuesdays to eat with this guy. And so we got together, did a collaboration video, and it was the first one. And I wasn't, I'm a clown, I'm a goof, and I shoot for the kneecaps when I'm goofing with somebody.
That's my head, right?
So we're doing a cutout, his first job together. I didn't really know his personality at that point, but he went up the ladder and he comes down with a gutter nail, and we're under a house. I don't know where the gutter nail came from, and he didn't have any tools in his hands, and I just jokingly said, "How'd you get that out with your teeth?" And when I said it, I was like, "Oh, here we go." He said, "That's my guy." So we've been giving each other black ever since.
Fred, when are you going to come do a removal with us?
That's the big question mark that's over my head right now, is if anyone has looked at their paperwork they came here with, it says this is about cutouts and cut-ups. I don't know where I play in that. These guys do the cutouts, but I don't really cut up. I'm deadpan, serious. I'm a little intimidated. But the other thing is, we're talking about all these personal stories, but this is about cutouts. Maybe there are people here right now that don't understand what a cutout is when it comes to bees, because they might think that that's just like finding bees on a fence post, that you need to cut the fence post off or something. So, since you're both experts, I'd like to set the tone a little bit.
Okay.
Now, you already subordinated yourself
Oh, definitely.
to Randy. And also I watched your videos too. Okay, and there's this competition that they have about who's done the first cutout of the year, because you seem to make a big deal about that. How many swarms somebody's caught, who does a cutout. So who's done the most cutouts? Just how many have you done in life? Just ballpark.
I'm right at 1,000.
1,000.
Maybe 400.
Okay, so support. There are other things when I see these cutouts that they're doing, and this is something that advanced beekeepers should be doing, not novice beekeepers. It requires some advanced knowledge of structure, household structure, and understand what you're getting into, as well as the biology of the honeybee, right? So I have questions for them that none of them ever answer, and it's really frustrating for me, so I'm just going to vent.
Can I say something?
Absolutely, that's why you're here.
So when Fred interviewed me before the dirt was and he did interview me for about an hour and 45 and Randy for about an hour and 15. But I mean, I'm not really but when
I think we went over about 2 hours, didn't we? And then when the video cut off, we kept talking for another half an hour.
Fred sent me a check for $2,000. So they see I know. Run again. So this.
Okay, so anyway, you were about to explain why you ignore all the science associated with beekeeping when you get into these beautiful environments where the bees have selected unoccupied structure, for example. I want to know things like what wall of the house was that on? Where is the entrance in relation to the swarm that's inside that building's wall? Do they have multiple entrances? Do they naturally distribute their resources with no upper entrance and no upper vent? And for example, if they have a little tiny sliver between, let's say, a couple of clapboards, and they built their entire colony in there, and you're going on and on about this 4-foot long piece of comb, which I've commented on about how artistic that is. But we have this tiny entrance in a hot part of the country. Now I'm from Pennsylvania, right? So these big colonies are in there in a tiny opening, and they perfectly distribute their resources without the aid of a queen excluder. And so I want to know things like that. Was it dirty underneath the comb? Was it like one of those bio boards or something? No, because bees are super clean. So what you guys do is reinforce everything I've already speculated on throughout my beekeeping life, and that's what I count on you for, the science.
But the problem I have is that I don't have a pocket to put the notebook in that you asked me to write this stuff down. That's the problem. And I wear gloves, so it's kind of hard to grab a pencil and pen.
The question about the entrances is it depends on what structure they're in. But they will operate out of one tiny entrance for a massive colony. They'll operate out of an entrance the size of a dime or a nickel for a 200-pound hive that's been in there for a long time. And they'll propolis everything in there, every crack, every crevice, every divot in the wood. They'll propolis everything in there and seal the entire hive up. So they're not worried about fresh air flow necessarily. The issue of whether or not there's trash under the hive has a lot to do with whether or not the hive is vertical or horizontal.
Okay.
A horizontal hive is generally going to have less trash under it because the bees will build down to within about 3/8 to a ½ inch of the bottom of the surface. So they'll build down to the drywall, is typically what it is. They'll sometimes dig into the drywall, chewing. If there was ever a dead out and it leaks honey into the drywall, that honey soaks into the drywall. Roaches will eat that out. Bees sometimes will chew that out. But a horizontal hive is generally cleaner than a vertical hive. Vertical hive will have a pile of trash under it a lot of times, especially if they chew insulation out of space. What was your other question?
Well, when you're saying horizontal hive, you're talking floor joists?
I'm talking floor joists.
Okay.
12 to 16 inch generally floor joists, and they'll run 6 to 8 foot long.
12 to 16 on center?
12 to 16 on the center, usually 10 inch boards, so 9.5 inch board.
In my defense, Fred, you don't watch every one of my videos, but in the last 6 or 7 of them, every time I do the hive, I say, and there's the entrance, Fred. There's the entrance, Fred. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop calling you Fred. I'm going to call you Professor Fred.
I knew this was a bad idea if it came and put us all together like this. But those are, I mean, for people that do cutouts that have that ability, that have all this, more than 1,000 of them, it is a great opportunity to document what you find and start to see some statistical norms, right? I mean, you wear your gloves all the time and can't write on paper, but since we have to tell stories and it's not just supposed to be cutouts and stuff, let's talk about who's got the largest cutout and what the circumstances were.
I would say that poor Randy, he is at a severe disadvantage to my. I gotta show you this. It's not obscene, but I gotta show you this. Look at the size of this. Seriously, that finger is like about 4 inches. So, Randy,
We work in tight spaces is what he's getting at.
Randy sometimes can't even put his hand in the area where the bees are.
So I've threatened many times to put Mr. Ed on a stick and shove him up in his face. Get to what I need to get to, because I just can't get it.
Yeah, he does.
I have Pete, but Mr. Ed is
Good time trouble.
much smaller than Pete.
And good time.
Yeah.
And speaking of good time, Charlie, it's another one of the advantages that I have over almost every other bee guy that does videos is that I have my own personal camera guy. And it's like, that is such a boom. Randy, or any other bee guys, they have to shoot their own video, put the camera where they want to get the shot that they want. And it's real, there is, because we do want to share what we see inside a home. It's very, we're privileged. I consider myself privileged to be able to open a house, a structure, wherever the bees are, and then to witness this creation, God's creation inside of it. And that's one of the reasons why I don't note anything. I'm just standing in awe of what I see. And it's just, I take that in, and it's almost like a personal thing. But I do now talk about your interest. But I do note construction, home construction, how it's done. And the few that I've done compared to Randy, that I've seen a tremendous variety. And Randy's seen what I've seen even more. And so we see what most people don't see. And in the most unusual circumstances, areas, and I always say that Randy has a way harder job because he does jobs that I don't even want because they're so hard to do, and he does them. It's tough.
Well, back to the original question, was who's got since we went down that rabbit trail, who's got the bigger hives? I would have to give it to Jeff because South Louisiana, for some reason, the hive, for every large one I do, he does 150% bigger. And it's not uncommon for him to post pictures of something, I'm just like, dude, I ain't done one that big in 6 months. But I don't know, it's just...
The ones, because you do a lot of removals in apartment construction, and their construction is different than home construction, where they use joists and there's wider space. And the one of them that we did together, the bees, I was glad that I had to leave early because it was huge. And they're not so much long, but they're just like more the size of a medicine ball. And that's very difficult to remove a hive in that configuration as opposed to one that's vertical, horizontal.
That was the largest one I've ever done. And it was in an apartment complex between floors with 16-inch trusses. So there was room to grow every direction because they're ladder trusses, if you've ever seen those. But when we opened it up, it looked like it was going to be a small hive. And so it's me and Jeff and my son, and we opened it up, got into it, and it just went way back and went back around a wall, and I couldn't hardly get to it. We ended up pulling almost 400 pounds of hive out of that. And he left me halfway through.
I had to go.
It's getting close to my bedtime.
I had to go take a nap.
By the time I was done with that, this was an occupied apartment, unfortunately. The family's getting ready for bed. They're like, "Are you about done?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm about done. I can't stand up. My hands are locking on my hive tools and stuff, or my knife." And that was the biggest one I've ever done. It's huge, and it took me a long time to drag all that stuff downstairs because it was hundreds of pounds of comb and honey.
But it was all relative. It's a year-old hive. That hive.
It wasn't very old.
Yeah, because it was a lot.
It was a well-maintained apartment complex, and they wouldn't have put up with a lot of bee traffic on a huge porch.
And I've done. I can remember off the top of my head 4 of them that were over 8 feet long, under trailers, in houses, abandoned houses, in the floor joists. I did one with Mike Barry. That hive was maybe 9 feet long, and we pulled about 8 ice chests of comb out of that. I don't know the weight because we had so much honey in that. And I do remember the queen of catch on that one because what we did, we cut the floor joist out, and the 2 of us tried, and it was about a 6-foot section that we cut out, and I put handles on this plywood. He was on one end, I was on the other. We lifted it up and threw it on the floor. And when we did, 3/4 of the hive came out. So it was probably about 300 pounds of hive that came out. And there was still another 200 pounds of hive in the floor. And when that hive flipped over on the floor, I started looking for the queen, and she was just wandering on the ground. We had our queen within 20 minutes. We had our queen.
Jeff likes those that are on the floor. He spends 45 minutes setting up sawhorses and a little workstation. And little floor pools, like the tie downs in the bottom of a trailer. He just makes it all pretty.
It adds to the drama of the video.
And then he misses the cut. But he likes those floor ones because he's so low to the ground, so the easy part.
Well, I did learn from watching JP, it's best to work off of a chair. I'm like, we're good off of a chair.
So there's another part of this that people sitting here may not understand. When he said you missed the cut because you're incapable or something, but
I don't know how to read a thermal camera.
the thermal camera, that's what I was going to get to. You're using a Nifty, or what are you using, a FLIR 1?
And I just have a handheld plate.
So you have a FLIR now. Did you have one then? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
sometimes,
I mean, I can't talk. I mean,
when you shoot that
FLIR,
FLIR, you get radiant heat, or if there's insulation there, you get
and surface
screening.
temperature, sure.
And so,
Excuses, yeah.
I gotta do something, because many times in the videos, I go, wrong side.
And you keep that in.
Oh, you
can. There,
Oh, I don't mind showing my fucking mistake.
Now, for example, since you're videoing something, there's some evidence that people take risks when they know that the camera's there witnessing what they're doing. In other words, if you didn't have a camera as evidence, you might just run away. But now, there's a camera. Right? So give me an example of, because you're videoing, how you were pushed to do something that you may not otherwise not have done. I'm not saying that you're creating videos for views. I mean, no YouTuber is trying to get views. Is there an example where if you weren't making a video, you would have just said, no, this is it, but I'm going to go for it because this is YouTube gold.
Yellow jackets under the trailer.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So my dad's over here. Yellow jackets under a mobile home in a mobile home park, and he decides he's going to go get them. And he's already, his feet were getting bad at that point, and he's getting a little up in age. But he says, I'm going to get this yellow jacket. I got to help these people. I just got to help them. They need help. I was like, they can get help from an exterminator. But they don't have any money, and I'm just going to go help them. So I'm like, if I don't go with him, he's just going to die. So we go, and I didn't know really anything about yellow jackets at this point. I didn't know they had a different venom than honeybees, and so I went with him. And when we were little, my aunt had this football-looking hornet nest hanging in the corner of her living room, and I always thought it was the neatest thing. So that's what was in my mind. A big yellow jacket nest on our mobile home. I thought it was just a big football-looking thing, because we don't have hornets really down there where we are. So I was like, I gotta save his life and get me a football. So we get on this job, and it's Southern Yellow Jackets. I had the cheapest paper thin suit on, and I was sweaty, so it was stuck to me anyway. I didn't know how to deal with a sweaty bee suit. It's just, you might as well be wearing paper mache. So they just tearing me up, just 4 or 5 stinks at a time. I got an extension on a shop vac, bang the side of the trailer, and they just swarm out and pop me a few times. I had to walk off and come back. And these people riding skateboards by, and I was like, y'all better get hurt. But they just wouldn't pay attention. I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna keep going. So we worked for 3 or 4 hours that night on that job. And I was like, I'm feeling kind of funny. We might ought to call this and come back another day. And and I think he got stung 6 times. He's over there crying. Man up. My wife said, "What are you gonna do?"
Mr. Ed's not the only one that gets his treatments.
Man up, Pansy. So we are at the house. You go to the hospital? No, I whole body did this until 5 o'clock the next morning. And I was just as sick as a dog, but I never took anything for it. Like, I can do this. But I went back and got it, and it turned out to be a giant, probably 3 times the size of that size of that deep box there, hive, and offered it to MSU, I think, Jeff Harris. He said, send him pictures, send him measurements. He said, well, we want it, but it won't fit in our case, and I can't find anybody that's willing to build us another case, so no. And I sent it to a collector in Tennessee. I can't remember his name, but he has a YouTube channel, and I hadn't seen him in a while. That was the craziest, dumbest thing I've done on video that I wouldn't do again, because I became anemic like a month later, and I don't know that it was related, but I went to the doctor and to check him out. I said, is it common? Is this common? He said, if you're a lady. What does it have anything to do with it? He said, no, I ain't never seen anybody get stung that many times by yellow jackets.
That's a great story.
Do you want to tell them?
Can I go plug real quick? I'd like to point out that he said that he was hot and sweaty, and the very thin bee suit that he was wearing was sticking to his skin, and therefore he got stung, because the whole point of the bee suit is to create a space between your skin and whatever it is that's trying to sting you. Now, I would like to point out that there are vented bee suits available, and there's a company called Guardian Bee Apparel. Now, to be fair, I have to say that I'm sponsored today by Guardian Bee Apparel.
So we did Charlie and I did a removal. It was the 5th of May of this year. And I remember that because it was Cinco de Mayo. And I was looking forward to doing this video, making the video on the 5th of May. And so this couple had contacted me asking if I'd come remove the bees. And it was in this pretty upscale neighborhood, big house. And I went to the house and I shot my FLIR, used my FLIR, and it was a hive that was difficult to locate. And from the downstairs, I couldn't find where the bees were. So I went upstairs into the second story. And when I was upstairs in the bedroom of the house, there the bees are right there. And so I knew where the bees were. But if you go downstairs and you shoot the FLIR, you can't find out where on the wall they were, or on the instant ceiling. And to make things even more difficult, there was a fireplace right where that hive is, somewhere in that space, because I can't get a reading on it. And I knew about where it was, but not exactly. But I knew if I was upstairs and I could cut through the $10,000 floor that they had, I could get them. But that wasn't an option. Sheetrock's a lot easier to replace than a $10,000 floor. And so I finally got a reading on where I thought the bees were, and from judging where the bees were coming in from the entrance of the hive, on the side of the house with the chimney, they were going in, and I said, well, it's right in line, it's almost exactly in line, so it makes sense that's where the hive is, and I still didn't get a good strong reading. Cut the ball, guess what? Come on. No bees. No bees. And I said, what? And I pulled the insulation down, and what it was a hot water pipe. and so I said, well, they're not here. They have to be in the joist section next to them, because that's where the entrance is in line to the outside. So I cut another hole. There. They weren't there. So now,
I would just like to put a disclaimer out there. This is for professionals. This kind of work is not your first year. I know about bees and somebody has them in their wall. Let me get my skills on head over there. The testimony couldn't be stronger.
which is why I've only done 300 and Randy's done 1,000. So they're not in the second one either. Now I'm hitting on to where the fireplace is jutting out from the wall. And it sticks out a good 15 inches. And so I said, oh, they got to be behind that part. And that would mean I'd have to open up the wall because I can't access the ceiling. I've got to go through the front of the fireplace. Guess what I did? I cut another hole. Guess what? They weren't there. And I said, well, how can this be? They're coming in here, they weren't there, and they weren't in the space next to it, and they weren't in the one next to it. But they're coming in now, they're coming in 3 feet away now. And so there was only, I said, well, were they on the other side? Did I go on the wrong way? And I went upstairs and shot the floor. There they are. And I said, I know where they are, I know where they are. So I went and I cut the fourth hole. They weren't there.
Did you just pick up your tools and leave it there?
And so it was at that point I said, Charlie, we're not making a video. and Charlie said, no, come on, Charlie. We're that close. We gotta do it. And I said, no. So there was only one place else it could have been, which was in the chimney. So I opened up the wall there, and sure enough, there they were. But the problem is that whoever framed up that chimney, it must have been, it might have been somebody Randy knew, because it was the weirdest construction. They had such a big space in there, and you had to lean over the mantelpiece to get, so you got 2 foot reach, and then you have a space, and then B. So it's almost a 3 foot reach to get inside there, and there's a big empty space that goes straight down to the ground. And this was a new swarm, and it was a big one. And as I started to take the hive apart, reaching in there, pulling out, because all I could do was pull it out. I couldn't cut. I didn't have arms or hands. I didn't have the reach. So I had to just start pulling out comb. And as I pull out comb, it's new comb, and it just breaks. Boom. And at least 4 sections of it fell down behind the wall, inaccessible. I could not get it. And I don't know if, Randy, why don't you tell us what happens when you have comb that you don't remove from a hive?
They'll continue to build if you lose the queen in there. But in just defense, removals behind chimneys are incredibly difficult and very challenging most of the time. And using a FLIR, there's a pretty good learning curve if you don't know that heat rises.
You should have told me that earlier.
Just checking for heat on the bottom of a structure. You're not usually going to find it unless they're really big and they built all the way down to near that surface, and they have a pretty good brood cluster. And even if you're using a FLIR to locate a hive and you locate something that looks this big, all you're generally going to pick up with the heat signature is the brood cluster. So you might see a hive that's between studs and you think it's a foot tall, but it might go from ceiling to the floor. It might go from the top plate to the bottom plate, because they're not going to keep any combs or any honey or any empty combs warm. The only thing you're going to breed from the FLIR is the brood cluster. And so I have pulled hives. The only feral colony I've ever pulled in 1,000 hives that had 2 queens in it is a hive had broken apart and fallen in the bottom, and the queen fell with it, and she stayed down there. She quit laying, but she stayed down there, and a group of bees stayed with her and kept working. The top hive, now queenless, made another queen, got it mated, and kept working. So Pete and I did that one. So by the time, she'd been laying pretty good and had cat brood by the time we pulled it. And then the other old queens in the bottom, still down there, still healthy, but not really doing anything. But if you miscomb, you're either gonna have, and depending on what it is, if it's brood combs, you might have high beetle maggots crawling through the house. If it's a good honeycomb, you might have wet walls, or if the sheetrock's not tight at the bottom and they don't have base mold, you might have honey running out in the carpet. It can cause problems. So did you cut another hole?
Thankfully, I said, I ain't cutting no more holes. But what happened was that the comb was new, it was brewed, and so we had maggots develop. And so I couldn't, and I told the people, I said, it fell back there, it's inaccessible, and eventually it'll go away. But we did remove the bees, we vacuumed them all, took all the comb out, and I didn't see the queen, but I did vacuum her. And the homeowners were calling me for the next 2 weeks. My wife is vacuuming every day, and these maggots, they're coming from nowhere. So I'm still so embarrassed about that I haven't posted that video, and I don't know if I ever will. Even though I do have it, and I did finish it.
Okay, this is my favorite part of what you just did. This whole experience, which, by the way, you ended up blaming the construction on.
And Randy's.
And you're so glad that all of this description of how you chopped your way through somebody's home right to the chimney chase. Okay, and you're so glad it's not on video. Because this is part of a business, and credibility is important. So here, let's move on. Let's do some more science stuff.
Could I say one more?
Say anything you want.
Just to.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Unlike Randy, and I don't fault anybody that does bee removals. They should be paid for that service because it is a service. I don't get paid. I do this for free.
That's good to know.
That's okay,
You know, Jeff works for the Abbey when he does these things, and they have some very generous donors. No, you don't work for free.
Whoa.
That's a little secret, and he just let it out.
Once again, just be glad you didn't make a video of that. I do have questions though, and this is because this is the way I think. So you guys are doing all these cutouts, and you have an opportunity to look at comb. And I've seen some fantastic comb that you pulled out, over 4 feet long sometimes, right? So I'm always looking at our bee boxes and the way we're putting our frames in there. And did you ever wonder about how do we determine that spacing of these frames? And I'm thinking, if only we had people that were continuously observing feral combs, they would be able to get these measurements, the center of the comb to the center of the comb to the center of the comb, if they're willing to write.
Or had a notebook.
And then we would get a consensus again. How far apart do the bees naturally draw their comb out? And I realize that this is widely variable, even in parts of the country and with types of bees, right? So, the combs that you've measured,
What's the spacing, center to center? How do they compare with what we're doing in boxes?
They were fairly close, but they'll vary up to a couple of inches sometimes. And it really depends on how they lay the height. I used to diagram some. Elizabeth was with me as my wife over there. Thank you, baby. The first time I decided to diagram one, I wanted to diagram bottle honey from each comb and note what part of the hive it came out of, relation to the entrance, relation to the north, south, and location from the brood. Was it above the brood, behind the entrance, all this kind of stuff. So she helped me in an old mid-century mug. I don't know how many hours we were in that place, diagramming and measuring and separating combs and stuff. but it's so random. It's not anything consistent. So you can't really put an accurate, exact measurement on how far they can or will go.
And I would say that because it's, as Randy said, random, the configuration, how they construct the comb in the space, it's very random because you very often, I'm thinking in my mind, when I open this hive up, and all I've seen on the flare is just a globe, I'm thinking the comb is running parallel with the studs. And then you open up and this comb is running face to me. So you have a slab instead of sections like this. And generally, in a 4-inch wall, you're gonna have three layers if they're a slab like that. But then in a 16-inch space, and determining on how much up and down they have, then if there's not that much space, they'll run comb straight down, or if there's a long space, they may break away and change the angle. It's always different. There's no one way they do it. So for us to assign an arrangement, designate an arrangement in a hive, it does like go against the natural thing. So like we force the bees to do this, but the way we do our frames in our hive bodies, it does mimic similar to what's out there in nature, but not totally, because if you do that rookie mistake where you put your box out there and your bees in there and you put 2 frames in and you got a 10-frame box and they got all this wacky comb up in there, that's what they do that. So we kind of force them to this arrangement, but then because they're so forgiving, they will then work with what we've given them. But there's no doubt, in my opinion, the feral bees and how they build, where they build, how they build, what they choose to build in will always be a mystery to me, and I'm always in awe of what I see when I open it up.
Well, I can solve some of those mysteries for you. Spend some time.
Yeah, well, I don't read, I don't write.
Yeah, you gotta be hands on. You can't leave midway through a job because you gotta go to bed.
Yeah, but it's, you wake up at 7 o'clock at night and you do your work at night. I'm not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever you do.
I'm understanding one between you two.
Hey, I had a question for you. Have you ever left the frames out of a box and had to do a kind of a cutout in a box? Or have you ever actually cut out on a truck?
The question is, have I ever made a mistake? But yeah, that happens. If you get in a rush or whatever, you leave a frame out, then they're going to attach the inner cover to the bottom, and then you're going to see some natural tone down there. And I see that as not a mistake, but rather something I wanted to share with people on This is what happens if you, now I did it to show you what would happen. To teach you. So my next question, oh, go ahead.
Well, I love that thing, teaching, and I've got to say again, since we got Pat over there, I've got to hand it to him because he's taught his son so much, and he's constantly willing to teach his son. And I remember very, very vividly this cutout that Randy, he was underneath. It was I think a church trailer. He was underneath it, and Randy's cutting out comb. And his dad saying, "Now you're looking for that queen, huh?" And Randy just wanted to get out of there. And he hands his dad the piece of comb and passes. "There's a queen right there, Randy." So I've probably seen Pat show Randy a queen half a dozen times over the times I've known her. And so, Pat, thank you so much. I tried several times pointing it out to him what a queen looks like. She's different, where to look for in the hive. And I will admit, I did at one time, I saw Randy standing 6 feet back. And he said, look, there's the queen right there. And I said, you are lying. But there she was. I don't know how you did that.
Some of that's true. But I tell you, Jeff doesn't really have to look for the queen because in most of his videos he uses the same old queen every time. She's dragging him around, tired of her. She just walks out and stands there and just grabs him.
So that's why the convenient queen in the cage in the pocket.
Charlie calls her mother.
Charlie calls her mommy.
Okay, so back on track. What is the longest continuous comb that you've found? Because sometimes you pull stuff out and you want to save it almost because it's that cool looking, right? So what is the longest continuous piece of comb that you've found in a cutout?
Probably for me, 7 or 8 foot.
7 or 8 feet.
On a horizontal.
Yep. So in the floor.
And before it goes to elevated. About 2-year-old height.
That's a good category. Free suspended comb. What's the longest piece you found?
Free suspended, probably 5.5, 6 feet.
Think about that.
But it's not necessarily free suspended because there are attachment points further down.
On the walls as well?
On the walls.
Okay. That's very interesting.
So I did Mike, world famous. He does only one removal a year, and then after that he'll get me to come do it. And on that one removal, I'll help him do that too. So but anyway, so Mike calls me up, Jeff, we got one in River Ridge, and we went over there, and the house was an abandoned house. It was abandoned since one of the hurricanes, so it was sat empty for years. And this hive was in it for who knows long. It was at least 4 years this hive had been in it, or if bees had been in the wall right here. And when we opened up the wall, this was the single biggest piece of comb that I saw. It was probably, I don't know, 5 feet long and about 2.5 feet wide. And we were able to pull one slab off of it, and that slab of honey weighed over 40 pounds, just for one slab of honey. It was the biggest thing that, I remember that because that's huge. That's huge.
That deserves a round of applause.
That's 1 point for me, right? It's amazing.
You mentioned dropping comb in walls earlier and hive beetle issues, and it brought me to mind that I don't know how many of y'all know who Shawi is. Shawi has the greatest story of hive beetles ever told, and he had a customer who had a dead out in the hive. The hive got inundated with hive beetles. Hive beetle larvae crawling out of the walls, and I don't know who called Shawi, but when he got there, the homeowner was scared to go in the room because they thought they had a body in the wall. Apparently they had just bought the house, probably the seller had exterminated, and so they've got maggots crawling all out of the wall. They thought they had a body in the wall. But Shawi's got a good story about that. But you get hive beetles in a structure, and when they come out, if you don't know hive beetle larvae, it can crawl a long way. So you might have 30 foot across a living room, dining room, whatever. Hive beetles crawl all the way across that house. So if you think, oh, they're just going to have a few maggots right around that cutout or right around that hive, guess again, my friend, because I had a lady call me to come look at a hive, and I said, this thing's done. It was a really, really high-end house, and it was going to cost a lot of money to get to where they were. I said, the hive's done. I can cut this up for this much, or we can wait and see what happens. She said, let's just wait and see what happens. That's what I prefer. She called me a few days later. She said, and this is a big house with a long dining room and living room. They're coming around the fireplace in the living room, going towards the dining room. Not sure if they were going towards the light, but they were traveling west. And she said, I have maggots all the way across my house, and this is a long, big house. And so if you think the problem is going to go away, just going to disappear, they'll come all over the house. Go up downstairs, or downstairs usually, but all over the house.
I have a question for you, Fred.
A question for me?
Yes. I was actually surprised that when I was talking about that removal where I punched 4 holes in those poor people's houses, and then I made comment that the bees were so far from the entrance that you didn't ask a question about that. So I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Now, why would a bee enter into a structure and travel 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, and then start building?
Well, as you pointed out earlier, the house was built wrong.
That's a good answer. That's a really good
That bee was in unfamiliar territory.
So I do have another story about that. The bees were entering into the bottom of a phase 4 joist. They were entering that space. There was rock down there. The bees had gone in it and entered into a supporting wall inside the building. So I knew where they were in the wall. And I was assuming that it is an old structure, a house built in early 1900, 1910. And so I'm under the assumption that since it's a wall, that there would be some kind of cross bracing in that stud wall going up, because they were 10-foot ceilings. And I shot my FLIR on that wall, all along the bottom of it, and I got nothing. I went around the other side, shot the wall, got nothing. And I'm seeing bees come in, go out, down at the bottom of the house. Now it's an elevated house, so it's about 2 foot off the ground. You got where the bees are coming in, and then you've got your interior wall. And I scanned that wall, and I've got nothing. So I go back inside, and I scan the outside wall. They're not there, they're not there. Because I thought they may have come in, gone to the right or to the left, and not straight in. They weren't there, and they were there. But I know we got bees. So I had one last thought. Randy, where do you think these bees are? and so I took my FLIR, and I went up 10 foot, and there they were, 10 foot up.
Old structure, right now we do, I don't want to school you on structure. We're doing what's called platform construction now, so 8 foot, and then you've got a platform, then you go on. Now older homes, I'm just guessing, this would have been called balloon construction. So for example, those studs went all the way through, right? So we don't do that anymore because of fire code, am I right? I've been validated by your Rooster.
He is an insurance
That's what's
adjuster.
going on. Yeah, it's balloon construction. Today, we don't allow that, but that's what you were dealing with. I mean, I'm not a rip-out guy,
But my question
I
is,
don't have an answer because I'm not a rip-out guy.
now, what happened, after I opened up the wall, and what I saw was originally the bees had began building comb down at the bottom. And for whatever reason, what I assumed happened was a swarm had moved into that. They started building comb. That swarm left, and another one moved in and went up, and they didn't even work the comb there. So it's unusual to, like I said before, every removal is different. Every removal is different. Not that some of them are they're not similar to the other ones, but they're all different. And so those are always the challenges. And for people to assume that the person that's removing this hive, that, well, why should they pay for the services to remove that hive? I mean, after all, you're getting bees, right? That's free bees. And look at all the honey that you're getting. Now, I got a question for you, Randy. You need any more bees?
I can always use bees.
What about honey?
I can always use honey.
No, I know something wrong. Something I want to talk about.
I want to talk about bee safety today.
Do you help?
So, no, when you're doing a cutout and you're separating, because a lot of people, you want to establish, I'm getting the feeling, but I have 1 minute. Okay, this will be quick. That just blew my train of thought. Oh yeah. So when you're cutting all this stuff out, you're going to haul the bees away. You want to separate the honeycomb that's capped from the brood frames so that you make sure that this doesn't drown your bees. So for those of you, even if it's a shed or something, if you find a bunch of honeycomb and the brood frames and you're going to haul them away, separate your brood frames because that honey's going to leak, you're going to tear it apart, and it's going to drip down over them, it's going to plug their spiracles, and they're going to suffer and die because of you. So,
Fred?
separate them.
Could I?
And we're not 1 minute, I'm sorry, does he have time?
I have 30 seconds. So again, you know, the infrequency of you viewing my videos is drastic assumption right here. Because if you would watch my videos, I have been separating brood comb
I was
from.
doing that for their benefit.
Oh, hey, blame it on Fred.
I believe you were.
Well, then I misunderstood.
I will.
And not only that, to further not encourage the honey to drip over a brood, I invert the brood in the box because that way I always know that that direction down is up once I start pulling out and framing it up. So,
Those are great tips.
Mr. Ed, can you pull this out?
Close this out, Mr. Ed.
Well, I thank everybody for bearing with us for this this torture. The thing is that I wish everybody could to see the interactions of how when Randy and I get together, because we probably talk 4 times a week. He lives only about, I don't know, 60, 70 miles away, so we talk a lot. And I mean, we trash talk each other, but that's because we love each other. And I've gotten comments about, oh, why you talk so bad about that guy? I said, do you see the size of that guy?
I mean, I saw a video where he jumped on my back. I tried to get him signed hat. He jumped up and down on my back.
They don't watch your channel, Randy.
So we were going to shoot a scripted skit. So I laid on the ground and said, get on my back and jump up and down and holler at me about, because I was trying to get him signed a hat. So he tries to get on my back and I said, get on. He said, I'm on. I said, no, with both feet. He said, I'm on with both feet. I said, well, jump. I don't want to hurt you. So just jump. So then at the end of the video, I'm riding my dad's little handicap scooter. I went to pop a wheelie for the video and I flipped it over backwards.
Thanks for watching. So can I say it? You can? So thanks for watching.
Keep on watching.
We'll be making more.
God
God bless. Mr. Red, Professor Fred. We're out of here to the next video. God bless.
Thank you, everybody. Real quick, couple announcements. The vendors are closed right now. In about 5 minutes, Cayman or somebody is going to give some final end of the day wrap-up announcements. The Bluegrass show tonight at 8:30. The doors will close, but they will reopen at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. So we'll see you down at the main hall here in just a few minutes.